How can you laugh at my ancestors?
The midday sun streamed through the large windows of the cafeteria, painting stripes of warmth across the worn linoleum floor. Laughter, the clatter of trays, and the murmur of 100 conversations blended into a comforting hum. At their usual corner table, Sarah, Emily, Liam, and Chloe were deep in their own vibrant world, a small island of shared jokes and easy camaraderie. Emily was mid-story, her hands flying as she recounted a disastrous attempt at baking, and Liam was doubled over, red-faced with mirth, a half-eaten sandwich forgotten in his hand. Chloe, ever the calm one, chuckled softly, her eyes crinkling at the corners. Sarah, her dark hair falling over one shoulder, leaned forward, a wide smile lighting her face, genuinely enjoying the infectious energy of her friends. And then, Emily gasped, wiping a tear from her eye. The smoke alarm went off and the cat, I swear, looked at me like I'd personally offended its ancestors. Liam finally straightened up, still wiping tears from his eyes. Oh man, that's classic Em. Reminds me of this old joke my uncle told me. You know, about the ancient times when people didn't have, modern conveniences and stuff. He paused, taking a dramatic bite of his sandwich, chewing slowly for effect. Sarah's smile remained, a pleasant warmth still lingering from Emily's story. She glanced at Liam, curious. Okay, hit me, Chloe said, a hint of amusement in her voice, sensing Liam was about to launch into one of his often rambling anecdotes. Liam swallowed, then leaned in conspiratorially, his eyes twinkling. So why did the old-timey person bring a ladder to the bar? He looked around, waiting for them to guess. Emily shrugged, still grinning. Chloe raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Sarah just watched him, her expression open and ready to be entertained. Give up? Liam asked, a mischievous glint in his eye. He didn't wait for an answer. Because they heard the drinks were on the house. He burst into laughter, a loud, booming sound that drew a few curious glances from neighboring tables. Emily joined in, a high, tinkling laugh that always made Sarah smile. Chloe let out a soft snort, shaking her head good-naturedly. But Sarah's smile faltered. The warmth in her eyes dimmed, replaced by a sudden, chilling stillness. The joke, harmless as it seemed, landed with the force of a physical blow. Old-timey person. The words echoed in her mind, not as a silly punchline but as a dismissive label. Her ancestors, the ones whose stories she carried, whose struggles and resilience shaped her very being, were often relegated to that same vague, almost cartoonish category. They weren't just old-timey people to her. They were individuals with names, with lives, with complex cultures and profound wisdom. The laughter of her friends, which moments ago had been a comforting melody, now sounded hollow, almost mocking. Her shoulders stiffened imperceptibly. The light in her eyes, so bright just seconds before, seemed to extinguish, leaving them dark and distant. She didn't laugh. She couldn't. The joy that had bubbled within her evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp ache that settled deep in her chest. She picked at a loose thread on her sleeve, her gaze fixed on the table, no longer seeing the crumbs or the spilled juice, but rather a swirling vortex of unspoken history and inherited pain. Emily, still chuckling, happened to glance at Sarah. Her laughter died in her throat. "Sarah," she asked, her voice soft, a note of concern creeping in. "You okay?" Liam, still wiping tears of laughter from his eyes, finally looked up. "What's wrong, Sarah? Didn't get it. It's a classic." He grinned, oblivious. Chloe, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, stopped her gentle smile. She looked from Liam's innocent face to Sarah's suddenly rigid posture, her brow furrowing slightly. The playful energy that had filled their corner of the cafeteria had vanished, replaced by an uncomfortable silence that seemed to grow heavier with each passing second. The clatter of trays and the hum of conversations around them seemed to amplify, highlighting the sudden quiet at their table. Sarah remained silent, her head bowed slightly, her dark hair shielding her face. Her hands, which had been so animated just moments before, were now clasped tightly in her lap, knuckles white. The air crackled with an unspoken tension, an invisible wall suddenly erected between Sarah and her friends. Liam and Emily exchanged confused glances, their previous mirth completely gone, replaced by a dawning sense of unease. They had no idea what had just happened, or why their friend, who had been laughing with them just moments ago, had suddenly gone so still, so quiet, so utterly, profoundly hurt. The easy laughter that had filled the cafeteria just moments before had evaporated, leaving behind a thick, uncomfortable silence. Emily's question, "Are you okay, Sarah?" hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. Liam, still oblivious, had pressed, "What's wrong with the joke, Sarah? It's just an old-timey joke." Chloe, usually quick with a quip, was uncharacteristically quiet, her gaze flickering between Liam's bewildered face and Sarah's stony expression. Sarah finally lifted her head. Her eyes, usually warm and expressive, now held a deep, simmering pain that startled her friends. Her voice, when it came, was not the gentle tone they were accustomed to. It was tight, strained, and filled with a raw emotion that made them all shift uneasily in their seats. "How can you laugh at my ancestors?" Sarah asked, the words cutting through the lingering tension like a sharp knife. The question hung in the air, echoing the profound hurt that had settled deep within her. Liam's brows furrowed in confusion. He looked from Emily to Chloe, as if seeking an explanation for Sarah's sudden intensity. "What are you talking about, Sarah?" he asked, his voice laced with genuine bewilderment. "It was just a joke, an old-timey joke. Nobody was laughing at your ancestors." He tried to backtrack, a defensive edge creeping into his tone. "It was just a silly story, that's all. We didn't mean anything by it." Emily, ever the mediator, nodded in agreement, her own face etched with concern. "Yeah, Sarah, he's right. It was just a bit of fun. No offense intended." Chloe, however, remained silent, her eyes fixed on Sarah, a flicker of understanding beginning to dawn in their depths. Sarah shook her head slowly, a bitter taste in her mouth. The dismissive way Liam had used the phrase old-timey person had struck a nerve, twisting something vital inside her. It wasn't just a joke to her. It was a casual erasure, a flippant disregard for generations of her people's experiences. "You don't understand," Sarah said, her voice a little stronger now, though still trembling with the force of her emotions. "When you say old-timey person like that, like it's some kind of quaint, funny thing from the past, you're talking about my ancestors. You're talking about people who lived through unimaginable hardships, who fought to survive, who had their land stolen, their culture suppressed." Liam shifted uncomfortably, his previous defensiveness giving way to a dawning realization that he had stumbled into something far deeper than he'd anticipated. "But it was just a figure of speech," he stammered, still trying to grasp the magnitude of her pain. "I didn't mean it literally. It was just a way to set up the joke." Emily reached out, placing a tentative hand on Sarah's arm, her expression now mirroring Chloe's growing unease. "Sarah, we really didn't think," Emily said softly, her voice filled with genuine regret. "We weren't trying to be disrespectful." Sarah pulled her arm away gently, not out of anger but out of a need to create a small space for herself, a boundary around her hurt. "But you were," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Whether you meant to or not, you were. My ancestors weren't just old-timey people for your amusement. They were real people with real lives, real struggles, real joy. Their history isn't a punchline." The tension in the air was palpable, thick with unspoken apologies and a growing sense of discomfort. Liam looked down at his hands, his usual boisterous demeanor completely gone, replaced by a sheepish silence. Chloe finally spoke, her voice soft. "Sarah, I think I get it," Chloe said, her gaze unwavering as she met Sarah's eyes. It's like if someone made a joke about a really painful part of your family's history and they just didn't understand why it wasn't funny." Sarah nodded, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes for Chloe's attempt at understanding. "Exactly," Sarah said. "It's not just a joke when it dismisses centuries of struggle, of resilience, of survival. It's not funny when it trivializes who I am, where I come from." The cafeteria, once a hub of noise and laughter, seemed to fade into the background, their small table becoming an island of raw emotion and escalating tension. There was no easy resolution here, no quick apology that could smooth over the hurt. The friends were starting to feel the weight of their words, the uncomfortable truth that their casual humor had inflicted real pain. Liam shifted again, a flush creeping up his neck. The easy camaraderie of their lunch had shattered, leaving them all in an unfamiliar and deeply uncomfortable space. The laughter had died, replaced by the heavy silence of realization and the unsettling understanding that some jokes, even those made without malice, could carry a profound and unexpected sting. The silence that followed Sarah's explanation was thick, heavy, and far more potent than any words exchanged before had been. It wasn't just a pause, it was a chasm that had suddenly opened between them, swallowing the easy camaraderie of moments ago. Emily, who had been about to take another bite of her salad, slowly lowered her fork, the clink against the plate sounding unnaturally loud in the sudden void. Her gaze flickered from Sarah's pained expression to Liam's bewildered face, then to Chloe, whose eyes, wide with understanding, mirrored Emily's own dawning discomfort. Liam, usually quick with a retort or a joke to lighten any mood, found himself utterly speechless. The casual humor he'd relied on for years, the kind that had always brought laughter and connection, had somehow become a weapon, though unintended. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his earlier defensiveness now dissolving into a confusing mix of guilt and bewilderment. He looked at Sarah, truly looked at her, and saw not just a friend, but someone whose hurt was raw and visible, a pain he had inflicted. The easy smile that usually played on his lips was gone, replaced by a tight, uncertain line. Chloe, ever the most attuned to the emotional currents of their group, broke the spell, though not with words. She simply reached across the table and gently placed her hand over Sarah's, a silent gesture of solidarity and empathy. Sarah didn't flinch, but her eyes, which had been fixed on some distant point, softened almost imperceptibly as they met Chloe's. The connection between them was palpable, a quiet acknowledgement of the weight of Sarah's words. The atmosphere at the table, which had been vibrant and full of shared laughter just minutes before, now felt fragile, brittle. The clatter of cutlery from other tables, the murmur of distant conversations, all seemed to amplify the stark quietness of their own space. It was the kind of silence that demanded introspection, forcing each of them to confront their own assumptions and blind spots. Emily, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on her, finally managed to clear her throat. "Sarah," she began, her voice softer than usual, I didn't realize." Her words trailed off, inadequate to express the sudden shift in her perspective. The casualness of their earlier conversation, the lightheartedness with which they'd approached Liam's joke, now seemed shockingly insensitive. She looked at Liam, a silent plea in her eyes for him to understand the gravity of what had transpired. But Sarah, her shoulders still slightly hunched, seemed to have retreated into herself. The explanation had taken a toll, draining her of the energy to continue the conversation. The raw vulnerability she had shown, the effort it had taken to articulate such deep-seated pain, had left her exposed and exhausted. She slowly began to gather her things, her movements deliberate and quiet. She picked up her bag, slung it over her shoulder, and then, without looking up, pushed her chair back. The scrape of the legs against the tiled floor was another jarring sound in the heavy quiet. I think I need to go," Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper, devoid of its usual warmth. She didn't meet their eyes, not wanting to see the pity or the continued confusion that might still linger there. The words hung in the air, a final, definitive statement that signaled the end of their lunch, and perhaps, for the moment, the end of their easy interaction. Before any of them could respond, before Liam could stammer out another apology or Emily could try to bridge the gap, Sarah turned and walked away. Her departure was swift, almost a blur, leaving behind a lingering sense of incompleteness. The sight of her retreating figure, shoulders still slightly slumped, was a stark image of the rift that had suddenly appeared between them. She didn't look back, disappearing quickly into the bustling lunch crowd, leaving her friends to sit in the uncomfortable aftermath of her absence. Liam, Emily, and Chloe were left alone at the table, the half-eaten plates of food now looking unappetizing. The sudden emptiness at Sarah's seat was a stark reminder of the unresolved tension that hung in the air. Emily picked at a loose thread on the tablecloth, her brow furrowed in thought. Liam ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration and bewilderment. Chloe, however, remained still, her hand still resting on the spot where Sarah's had been, a quiet understanding etched on her face. The silence returned, but this time it was different. It wasn't just uncomfortable, it was laden with the weight of what had been said and what had been left unsaid. There was no easy reconciliation, no easy fix for the pain that had been exposed. The friends exchanged worried glances, a silent acknowledgement of the unexpected depth of Sarah's hurt and their own unwitting role in it. The lunch had ended not with a cheerful farewell, but with a lingering, unresolved silence, leaving them to ponder what had just happened and what it meant for their friendship. The tension remained, a palpable presence, a silent testament to the fragile nature of understanding and the enduring power of history. The clatter of trays and distant murmur of cafeteria chatter seemed to amplify the silence at the table where Emily, Liam, and Chloe sat. Sarah's empty chair was a stark reminder of the abrupt departure. Liam was the first to break the quiet, a frustrated sigh escaping his lips. "I still don't get it," Liam said, running a hand through their hair. "It was just a joke. An old-timey joke, nothing more." Emily picked at a loose thread on their sleeve, their gaze unfocused. "But she was really upset, Liam. You saw her face." Chloe nodded, their voice softer than usual. "More than upset, Emily. She was hurt. Deeply hurt." Liam scoffed, though the usual bluster seemed muted. "Hurt? Over a joke? Come on, Chloe. People get offended by everything these days. You can't say anything without someone getting their feelings hurt." "This felt different," Emily insisted, finally looking up. "It wasn't just being offended. It was like we really struck a nerve, like we dismissed something important to her." "Exactly," Chloe agreed, leaning forward slightly. "Remember what she said about it trivializing her ancestors' struggles, about their history being a punchline." Liam shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah, but I didn't mean it like that. I was just talking about old-timey stuff. Like old-fashioned things, not her ancestors. How was I supposed to know?" "Maybe that's the point, Liam," Emily said slowly, a new understanding dawning in their eyes. "Maybe we weren't supposed to know, but now we do." And she was clearly in pain. "I just don't understand why," Liam reiterated, though the defensiveness was starting to crack. "It felt like it came out of nowhere. One minute we're laughing, the next she's gone." Chloe sighed, running a hand over their forehead. "I think it's because it's not just about the joke, Liam. It's about everything that joke represents to her. The way her people's history has been treated, perhaps. The way it's been ignored or made light of." Emily's eyes widened. "Like when I said it was like joking about my great-grandparents' struggles during the war, Chloe. You said you understood that." "Precisely," Chloe confirmed. "It's the same principle. If someone made a flippant remark about your family's deep trauma, you'd be hurt too, wouldn't you?" Liam was silent for a moment, the usual easy smile gone from their face. "Yeah, I guess so. But I still feel like I'm walking on eggshells, like I can't just be myself." "It's not about not being yourself, Liam," Emily said gently. "It's about being aware, being mindful of how our words can affect others, especially when we don't know their full story. And we clearly don't know Sarah's full story, do we?" Chloe added, a thoughtful frown creasing their brow. "Not really. We know bits and pieces, but not the depth of what she carries." "I just feel bad," Emily admitted, their voice barely a whisper. "I mean, we just sat there. We didn't really know what to say, and then she just left." Liam finally looked up, a flicker of something new in their eyes. Yeah, I feel bad too. I didn't mean to hurt her. Not at all. They paused, then added, but what are we supposed to do now? She just walked out. Maybe we should talk to her, Chloe suggested. Apologize, try to understand more. But what if she doesn't want to talk? Liam asked, a hint of apprehension in their voice. What if she's just done with us? Emily shook their head. I don't think so. Sarah's not like that. She's strong, but she's also very kind. I think she just needed to get away. It was a lot all at once. Meanwhile, across town, Sarah sat on the edge of their bed, the quiet of their room a stark contrast to the cacophony of the cafeteria. The lingering sting of the conversation, the casual dismissal of their pain, was a dull ache in their chest. They had tried to explain, to articulate the weight of history that the word old-timey carried for them, the way it stripped away the dignity and resilience of their ancestors, reducing their profound journey to a quaint, bygone era. But it felt like their words had landed on deaf ears, bouncing off a wall of well-meaning but ultimately ignorant incomprehension. They had seen the confusion in Liam's eyes, the defensiveness, and even in Emily's initial bewilderment. Only Chloe had seemed to grasp a fraction of it, a fleeting moment of connection that had quickly faded under the pressure of the group dynamic. The isolation was palpable. It wasn't just the physical distance from their friends. It was the emotional chasm that seemed to open up, a stark reminder of how deeply misunderstood they often felt when it came to their heritage. It was exhausting, constantly having to educate, to explain, to justify the validity of their pain. Sometimes, it felt easier to just retreat, to nurse the wounds in silence. Sarah picked up a small, intricately beaded pouch from their nightstand, tracing the patterns with their thumb. It was a gift from their grandmother, a tangible link to the very history Liam's joke had inadvertently trampled upon. Each bead, each stitch, represented generations of survival, of resistance, of cultural continuity despite immense hardship. It wasn't old-timey, it was enduring, it was living. A wave of weariness washed over them. Would their friends ever truly understand? Would they ever see beyond the surface, beyond the easy stereotypes and the casual ignorance that permeated so much of mainstream society? It felt like an uphill battle, one they had fought countless times before, and one they were tired of fighting alone. The desire to connect, to share their world with their friends, was strong. But the fear of being hurt again, of being dismissed, was equally powerful. Back at the cafeteria table, Liam watched Emily and Chloe. So, what, we just go up to her and say, sorry, we're ignorant? Liam asked, a hint of sarcasm but also genuine uncertainty in their voice. Emily looked at them, a determined glint in their eyes. No, Liam, we go up to her and say, we're sorry we hurt you, and we want to understand. Because that's the truth, isn't it? We don't understand, not fully, but maybe we can learn. Chloe nodded in agreement. It's about showing her that her feelings matter and that her history matters. Even if we don't get it right away, the effort to learn is what counts. Liam let out a slow breath, the last vestiges of their defensiveness finally receding. Okay, Liam said, the word quiet but firm. Okay. So what do we do first? The seed of curiosity, though still small, had finally been planted. They knew Sarah was hurting, and for the first time, they felt a genuine desire to bridge the gap, to move beyond their own discomfort and step into a space of true understanding. The silence that followed was no longer awkward, but filled with a nascent sense of purpose. The silence at the table stretched, thick with unspoken guilt, long after Sarah had left. Emily, their usual bright demeanor dimmed, picked at a loose thread on their sleeve. Liam, who had been so quick to dismiss Sarah's reaction, now stared blankly at the empty chair where Sarah had sat, the remnants of their joke feeling like ash in their mouth. Chloe, usually the most pragmatic of the group, looked between Emily and Liam, a furrow of concern deepening on their brow. I just don't get it, Liam finally mumbled, the bravado gone from their voice. It was just a joke. Emily sighed, a sound heavy with regret. Liam, it wasn't just a joke to Sarah. You saw their face. It was like we'd just taken a weapon to them. Chloe nodded slowly. Liam, imagine if someone made a joke about something really painful in your family's past. Something that affected generations. It wouldn't be funny, would it? Liam shifted uncomfortably, the realization slowly dawning. No, I guess not. Exactly, Emily said, pushing away their plate. Sarah has to deal with this kind of stuff all the time, Liam. We don't see it. Yeah, Liam said, the word barely a whisper. I feel like I really messed up. Emily stood up abruptly. We all did, Liam. We let our ignorance get the better of us, but we can fix this. We have to. Chloe looked at Emily, a flicker of hope in their eyes. What do you mean, Emily? I mean, Emily began, their voice gaining a determined edge. We need to understand, really understand. Not just apologize for the joke, but apologize for not knowing better. For not being better friends to Sarah. Liam looked up, a hesitant nod. Okay, but where do we even start? Emily pulled out their phone, their fingers already flying across the screen. I don't know about you two, but I'm going to Google. I'm going to find out everything I can about Sarah's history, about what we clearly missed in school. Chloe and Liam exchanged a glance. The idea was daunting, but the alternative remaining in their ignorance, potentially hurting Sarah again, was worse. I'm in, Chloe said, pulling out their own phone. Liam hesitated for a moment longer, then a resolute look crossed their face. Me too, I need to understand. And so, the three of them, still at the lunch table, began their impromptu research. Emily, driven by annoying guilt, started with broad searches. Native American history, indigenous peoples of North America. The initial results were overwhelming, a torrent of information they had never encountered in their textbooks. Oh my God, Emily whispered, their eyes scanning an article. Did you guys know about the Trail of Tears? They looked up, their face pale. Thousands of people forced from their homes, marching for months. So many died. Chloe, who was looking at a different article, gasped. And the massacres. The Sand Creek Massacre, Wounded Knee. I've never heard of any of this before. Their voice was filled with disbelief. They taught us about pioneers and westward expansion, but not this. Liam, initially skeptical, was now riveted by the screen. Boarding schools. They read aloud, their voice laced with horror. They took children from their families, cut their hair, forbade them from speaking their own languages, tried to civilize them. This is barbaric. The more they read, the more the pieces started to click into place. The casual disregard for indigenous lives, the systematic destruction of cultures, the broken treaties. It was a history of pain and injustice that had been largely invisible to them. Emily scrolled through image after image, their hearts sinking with each click. Look at these pictures, they said, their voice thick with emotion. These are real people, families, children, and we knew nothing. Chloe shook their head slowly. It's like they deliberately left this out of our history books, like they wanted us to forget. But Sarah hasn't forgotten, Liam said, their voice quiet. Their family hasn't forgotten. This is their history. This is why it hurt so much. A heavy silence descended again, but this time it was different. It wasn't the silence of discomfort, but of dawning understanding, of shared sorrow. Their initial guilt had morphed into something deeper, a profound sense of ignorance, and a desperate need to bridge the chasm between what they thought they knew and the painful reality. We have to talk to Sarah, Emily said, finally breaking the quiet. Their voice was firm, resolute. We can't just apologize for the joke. We have to apologize for our ignorance, for not seeing them, really seeing them before this. Chloe nodded, their eyes wide with a newfound awareness. And we need to listen, truly listen to what Sarah has to say, not just about the joke, but about everything. Liam, who had been the most resistant, now looked up, a determined glint in their eyes. Yeah, we owe them that much, and more. The desire to understand Sarah, to make amends, burned brightly within them. They knew this was just the beginning of their education, but for the first time, they felt truly ready to learn. The silence in Sarah's apartment felt heavy, a stark contrast to the usual lively chatter of her friends. She had been avoiding their calls, the memory of Liam's thoughtless joke still stinging. It wasn't just the joke itself, but the casual way it had been delivered, as if her heritage was something to be mocked, a relic from a forgotten past. Sarah had spent years trying to navigate the complexities of her identity, the pride and the pain interwoven, and to have it dismissed so flippantly by people she considered close. It was a betrayal. She knew they didn't mean to hurt her, not intentionally, but that almost made it worse. Their ignorance was a weapon, wielded without malice, yet capable of inflicting deep wounds. Her phone buzzed again, Emily's name flashing on the screen. Sarah sighed, debating whether to answer. She was tired of explaining, tired of feeling like she had to educate everyone around her. But then, a different thought surfaced. Emily had always been the most empathetic of the group, the one most likely to genuinely try to understand. Maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. She took a deep breath and answered. "Sarah, oh, thank goodness you picked up." Emily's voice was soft, laced with a genuine urgency Sarah hadn't heard before. I am so sorry. We were awful. Liam, Chloe, and I, we didn't understand, not really, but we've been trying to learn, I mean." Sarah's grip on the phone tightened. "Learn what, Emily? How to make better jokes about my ancestors." The words came out sharper than she intended, but the hurt was still raw. "No, Sarah, never that," Emily said quickly, her voice cracking slightly. "We've been reading, a lot, about everything. The Trail of Tears, the boarding schools, the massacres, things we never learned in school, and it's horrific. We were so ignorant and we feel terrible. Please, can we just talk, face to face? I need to tell you how truly sorry I am." Sarah was quiet for a moment, weighing Emily's words. The sincerity in Emily's voice was undeniable, a stark contrast to the casual dismissal she'd experienced before. A tiny crack, almost imperceptible, formed in the wall she had built around herself. "I don't know, Emily," Sarah said, her voice still guarded. "I'm just tired." "I understand," Emily replied, her voice gentle. "But please just give us a chance. Give me a chance. We want to do better. We want to understand. We really do. Can we meet for coffee, just us? No pressure, no expectations, just a conversation." Sarah hesitated, then finally relented. "Okay, Emily, fine. Tomorrow morning, that little coffee shop on Elm Street, 10 o'clock. "Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much." Emily's relief was palpable. "I promise you won't regret it." The next morning, Sarah arrived at the coffee shop a few minutes early, her heart a tangled knot of apprehension and a flicker of hope. She saw Emily already seated at a small table in the corner, a stack of books beside her, looking nervous. As Sarah approached, Emily immediately stood, her eyes wide with a mixture of regret and earnestness. "Sarah," Emily began, her voice barely above a whisper, "thank you for coming, really." Sarah nodded, taking the seat opposite Emily. "What did you want to talk about, Emily?" she asked, her voice still cool, a protective barrier. Emily took a deep breath, her gaze unwavering. "I wanted to apologize, Sarah. Not just for Liam's joke, but for our collective ignorance. For my ignorance. When you walked away, Liam, Chloe, and I, we were confused at first. Liam even said it was just a joke. But Chloe and I, we started talking and we realized how wrong that was, how incredibly insensitive. And then we started to look things up. We started with the Trail of Tears, and then the boarding schools, and the massacres. And Sarah, I am so ashamed of how little I knew, how little we all knew." Emily's eyes welled up, but she blinked back the tears, her resolve clear. "It's not just history, is it? It's living history. It's trauma that still affects people today. It affects you. And for us to make light of that, to dismiss it, it was unforgivable. I am so deeply sorry for the pain we caused you. I am sorry for not listening, for not seeing, for not understanding. We were so caught up in our own world, our own comfortable ignorance, that we completely overlooked the depth of your experience, the richness of your heritage, and the immense suffering your ancestors endured." We called ourselves your friends, and yet we were blind to so much of who you are." Sarah watched Emily, a slow unclenching happening in her chest. Emily wasn't just apologizing for the joke. She was apologizing for the systemic ignorance, for the lack of empathy, for the failure to see Sarah fully. This was different. This felt real. We've been reading about the forced assimilation, the loss of language, the way Indigenous people have been systematically dispossessed of their land and culture, Emily continued, her voice filled with a raw sincerity. It's not just a few isolated incidents, it's a continuous, brutal history, and we were completely oblivious. We want to change that, Sarah. We want to truly understand, not just for you, but for ourselves. To be better people, better friends, better allies. Sarah's guard, which had been so firmly in place, began to crumble. Emily's remorse was palpable, her words resonating with a genuine desire for understanding. It wasn't a perfunctory apology. It was an admission of profound ignorance and a commitment to learn. It's a lot to take in, isn't it? Sarah said softly, her voice losing some of its earlier sharpness. It's not something you can learn in a few days. I know, Emily nodded, her gaze earnest, and we don't expect to, but we're committed to learning, to listening, to doing the work. This is just the beginning. We want to be able to hear your stories, Sarah, and truly understand them. We want to be able to stand with you, not just as friends, but as people who are aware of the injustices and complexities of your heritage. We know we messed up badly, but we hope you can see that we're trying to make amends, not just with words, but with genuine effort to educate ourselves. We realized that our ignorance wasn't just a personal failing, but a reflection of a larger societal problem, and we want to be part of the solution, even if it's just in our small circle. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched Sarah's lips. This was a crack, a real crack in their ignorance. Maybe, just maybe, this was a chance for her to truly be heard, not just by Emily, but by Liam and Chloe too. It wouldn't erase the pain, but it was a beginning, a very fragile, tentative beginning. "Thank you, Emily," Sarah said, her voice still quiet but with a newfound softness. "Thank you for trying, and thank you for apologizing. It means a lot, more than you know." Emily's face brightened, a wave of relief washing over her. "So does that mean you're willing to talk more, to share? We want to listen, Sarah, really listen." Sarah took a sip of her coffee, the warmth spreading through her. "Maybe," she said, a hint of a smile now playing on her lips. "Maybe, but it's not going to be easy. There's a lot to unpack." "We're ready," Emily said, her voice firm with conviction. "We're ready to learn, we're ready to listen, and we're ready to be better friends. We understand now that when someone laughs at old-timey stereotypes, it feels like laughing at the very real suffering and strength of your ancestors. We understand that their struggles weren't just history, they are a living part of your identity. We're starting to grasp the weight of your heritage, Sarah, and we want to honor it." Sarah took a slow sip of her coffee, the warmth a small comfort against the lingering chill of vulnerability. Emily, Liam, and Chloe sat across from her, their usual boisterous energy replaced by a quiet, attentive stillness that Sarah hadn't seen from them before. This was different. This wasn't just an apology for a bad joke. It felt like a genuine opening. "It's hard to know where to start," Sarah began, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "Because it's not just one thing, you know. It's everything. It's woven into who I am, into who my family is." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "My great-great-grandmother, she was a child during the Trail of Tears. She walked. Her family, they were Cherokee, and they were forced from their homes, from their land in Georgia. They left everything behind. She told stories about the cold, the hunger, the sickness that swept through their group. She saw so many people die, so many children." A tremor ran through Sarah's voice, and Emily reached out, placing a hand gently on Sarah's arm. Sarah didn't pull away. "One of her younger brothers, he didn't make it," Sarah continued, her gaze distant, lost in the echoes of the past. "He was just a baby. They had to bury him by the side of the road, and they couldn't even mark the grave properly because they were being rushed along." Imagine that, having to leave your child, your sibling, your parent just there, and then keep walking, knowing you can't go back. Liam shifted in his seat, his face pale. I knew about the trail of tears from our research, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, but hearing it like that. From your family. It's different. Yeah, Chloe added, her eyes wide with a mixture of sorrow and dawning comprehension. It's not just a historical event, is it? It's a family story. Exactly, Sarah affirmed, nodding. It's not just history, it's living memory. It's trauma passed down through generations. My grandmother, she always talked about the importance of our language, even though she didn't speak it fluently herself. Her parents, they were punished in boarding schools for speaking Cherokee. They were told it was savage, that they needed to be civilized. So they stopped teaching it to their children to protect them, to make them fit in. But in doing that, we lost so much. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, and she blinked them back fiercely. My grandmother always regretted that. She said it felt like a piece of her soul was missing. And that's a common story for so many Indigenous families. The loss of language, of traditions, of ceremonies. It's not just a language, it's a way of seeing the world, a connection to our ancestors, to our land. Emily's voice was thick with emotion. I can't even imagine, she said, shaking her head slowly. To have your culture, your identity, systematically stripped away like that, and to think we were so blind to it. Not just stripped away, but actively suppressed, Sarah corrected gently. And then, after all that, for people to make jokes about Indian names or war paint or whatever other stereotype is floating around, it's like they're laughing at all that pain, all that loss, all that resilience. Liam cleared his throat. When we were doing our research, we read about the residential schools too, he said, his voice strained. The horrors of those places. I can't believe I never learned about that in school. It makes me so angry. Yeah, me too, Chloe agreed, her brow furrowed. It's like they deliberately hid it from us. They did, Sarah said, a hint of weariness in her tone, or they downplayed it, or they presented it as progress. But for us, it was genocide. Cultural genocide, yes, but also just genocide. My family, they were lucky in some ways. They survived. Many didn't. Many were erased from the history books, from the land, and then were expected to just get over it, to be modern. But how can you get over something that still affects every aspect of your life? The poverty rates, the health disparities, the violence against Indigenous women, it's all connected to that history. Emily squeezed Sarah's arm again. Thank you for sharing this, Sarah, she said, her voice sincere. Really, it means so much that you trust us enough to tell us. We're so sorry we were so ignorant. It's not about blame, not entirely, Sarah replied, looking at each of them in turn. It's about understanding. It's about recognizing that what happened in the past isn't just the past for us. It's the present. It's the reason why my family struggles, why we fight so hard to reclaim our language, our ceremonies. It's why we're so proud of who we are, despite everything. Because to survive all that, to still be here, to still be Indigenous, that's a testament to our strength, to our ancestors' strength. And the joke about old-timey stereotypes, Liam began, his voice barely a whisper. It really did feel like laughing at that strength, didn't it? At that survival. Sarah nodded, a single tear finally escaping and tracing a path down her cheek. It felt like you were laughing at my great-great-grandmother, walking that trail, burying her baby. It felt like you were laughing at my grandparents, trying to keep our culture alive in secret. It felt like you were laughing at me for carrying all that history, all that pain, and all that pride. Chloe reached across the table, taking Sarah's free hand. We weren't laughing at you, Sarah, not intentionally. But we understand now that our ignorance made it feel that way. And we are so sorry. What can we do? Emily asked, her voice earnest. How can we be better friends? How can we be allies? Sarah took a deep breath, feeling a profound shift in the atmosphere. The tension that had been a constant companion since the joke had been made began to dissipate, replaced by something fragile but real. Connection. Just listening like you are now is a huge start, she said, her voice a little stronger. And learning, not just from me, but from indigenous voices, from books, from documentaries. And when you hear something that's not right, say something. Challenge it. Don't let people perpetuate those stereotypes. Educate others just like you educated yourselves. We will, Liam said, his voice firm. I promise, Sarah. We will. Thank you, Sarah said, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips. Thank you for really listening. It means more than you know. The conversation wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt truly seen, truly heard by her friends. The path ahead was still long, but they had taken a crucial first step together, bridging a divide with empathy and a shared commitment to understanding. Sarah took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping over her friends. Emily, Liam, and Chloe sat before her, their usual boisterous energy replaced by a quiet, attentive stillness that Sarah hadn't seen from them before. This was different. This wasn't just an apology for a bad joke, it felt like a genuine opening. When someone laughs at those old-timey stereotypes, Sarah began, her voice soft but firm, it's not just a joke to me. It feels like laughing at the very real suffering and strength of my ancestors. She paused, letting her words sink in. It's like that joke about the ignorant savage or the warrior in feathers. People think it's harmless, just a silly image from the past. Liam shifted in his seat, his previous dismissiveness replaced by a solemn quiet. Chloe nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on Sarah. But those images, Sarah continued, they're not just history to me. They're a living part of my identity. My great-great-grandmother, she walked the Trail of Tears, not some abstract historical event in a textbook, but her. She lost her home, her family, everything. And then her children and their children, they faced boarding schools, where they were beaten for speaking their own language, for practicing their own traditions. They tried to strip away everything that made them indigenous. A single tear traced a path down Sarah's cheek, but her voice remained steady. When a joke trivializes that, when it makes light of the very things they fought and died to preserve, it's like it's happening all over again. It's like their struggles weren't important, like their pain was just a punchline. Emily reached out, gently placing her hand over Sarah's. Sarah, she said, her voice thick with emotion, we had no idea. We really didn't. Yeah, Liam added, his voice barely a whisper. We saw it as something from a long time ago, like it didn't affect anyone anymore. But it does, Sarah said, her gaze meeting Liam's. It affects me. It affects my family. That trauma, it's passed down. It's called intergenerational trauma. It's not just memories, it's in our genes, in how we cope, in the disparities we still face today. It's why mental health issues are so prevalent in indigenous communities, why addiction rates are higher, why we still fight for basic rights and recognition. Chloe's eyes widened. So when you reacted so strongly to Liam's joke, it wasn't just about the joke itself. It was about all of that. It was about your ancestors, about what they went through. Sarah nodded. Exactly. It felt like a dismissal of their resilience, their courage, their very existence. They survived unimaginable horrors and they fought to keep our culture alive. When someone laughs at a stereotype that's rooted in that suffering, it feels like they're laughing at them, at their strength, at their sacrifices. Liam visibly flinched. I am so incredibly sorry, Sarah, he said, his voice raw with regret. I never, not for a second, thought about it like that. I didn't connect it. I didn't see the depth of it. None of us did, Sarah, Emily said, squeezing Sarah's hand. We were so ignorant. We learned so much when we started researching about the Trail of Tears, about the Cherokee Nation, about everything. But even then, we didn't fully grasp how personal it was, how much it's still a part of you. It's not just history, Sarah reiterated, her voice gaining a quiet power. It's my story. It's our story. And when those jokes are made, it makes it harder for us to be seen, to be understood, to heal. It reinforces the idea that we're just relics of the past, not living, breathing people with vibrant cultures and ongoing struggles. Chloe leaned forward. Okay, so the joke, the one Liam made, it wasn't just a bad joke. It was like it was erasing all of that. All the pain, all the strength, all the history. Yeah, Sarah confirmed. It felt like it was saying, your ancestors' suffering doesn't matter enough to be respected. It's just fodder for a laugh. A profound silence fell over the table, broken only by the clinking of cups from other patrons. The initial joke, which had seemed so trivial just days ago, now hung in the air, heavy with unspoken history and deeply felt pain. The lightness of the coffee shop felt out of place against the weight of Sarah's words. Liam looked down at his hands, his face pale. I feel sick, Sarah. Knowing what I know now, knowing what you just explained, I can't believe I was so thoughtless. It's okay, Liam, Sarah said, her voice softening slightly. You didn't know, that's why we're talking now. That's why this conversation is so important. Emily nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. This isn't just about the joke anymore, is it? It's about seeing you, really seeing you, Sarah. And understanding that your heritage isn't just some abstract concept. It's who you are. Their history is my present, Sarah said, her gaze meeting each of her friends' eyes in turn. Their resilience is my strength. And their struggles, they're still very much alive. Chloe reached across the table, taking Sarah's other hand. Thank you, Sarah, she said, her voice thick. Thank you for being so patient with us. Thank you for helping us understand. We really get it now. The air in the coffee shop seemed to shift, a palpable change in the atmosphere around their table. The initial confusion and defensiveness had dissipated, replaced by a deep, shared understanding. The weight of Sarah's heritage, once an abstract concept, was now a tangible presence, felt and acknowledged by all of them. The joke had been recontextualized, not as a simple misstep, but as a painful reminder of a deeper, systemic ignorance. And in that recontextualization, a new perspective had begun to form, bridging the divide between them. The silence that followed Sarah's raw confession was different this time. It wasn't the awkward, uncomfortable quiet of before, but a heavy, thoughtful stillness, pregnant with understanding. Liam was the first to break it, his voice low and sincere. He said that he really didn't know how to apologize enough for his ignorance, and that he felt ashamed of himself. He promised Sarah that this was a wake-up call for him, a real one, and that he would do better. He said that he would learn and that he would listen and that he would never make a joke like that again. Emily reached across the table, gently touching Sarah's hand. She said that Liam was right and that they all felt it. She said that they had been so caught up in their own lives, so oblivious, and that it was inexcusable. Emily said that they had started reading, just like Sarah suggested, and that it was horrifying but also so important. She said that the trail of tears, the boarding schools, the sheer brutality of it all, it was something they should have known about their entire lives. Chloe nodded, her eyes still a little red-rimmed. She said that she had always thought of history as something distant, something in textbooks, but that Sarah had made it real. Chloe said that hearing about Sarah's great-great-grandmother, about the loss of language, about the ongoing pain, it had changed something inside her. She said that she wanted to be a better friend, a better ally, and that she was committed to learning everything she could. Sarah looked at each of them, her gaze lingering. She could see the genuine remorse, the dawning awareness in their eyes. It wasn't just words. It was etched on their faces in the way they held themselves, in the quiet intensity of their presence. She said that she appreciated that, really. Sarah said that it wasn't about a quick fix or about them suddenly becoming experts. She said that it was about the willingness to learn, to listen, and to truly understand that her history, her heritage, wasn't just a story from the past. Sarah explained that it was her present, her identity, and the very fabric of who she was. She said that their resilience, the strength of her ancestors, was her strength too. She said that it meant a lot to her that they were trying, that they were finally seeing her, truly seeing her, for who she was. Liam cleared his throat. He said that they wanted to do more than just read. He said that they wanted to go with Sarah to events, to learn from Indigenous voices, to support Indigenous communities. Emily chimed in, saying that they had even looked up some local cultural centers and that they wanted to be respectful, to learn the right way. Chloe added that they understood now that this wasn't just about Sarah, but about a whole community, a whole history that had been deliberately ignored. She said that they wanted to be part of changing that, even in their own small way. A small, genuine smile touched Sarah's lips. It was the first time she had truly smiled since Liam's thoughtless joke days ago. She said that she would like that very much. Sarah said that it wouldn't be easy and that there would be more to learn, more to understand, but that this was a good start. She said that she felt a sense of relief, a weight lifting from her shoulders, knowing that her friends truly got it now. Sarah said that the conversation wasn't over. It was just beginning. She said that this wasn't a one-time fix, but an ongoing journey, and that she was glad they were willing to walk it with her. The tension that had hung heavy between them for days began to dissipate, replaced by a quiet sense of hope and renewed connection. The coffee shop buzzed around them, but in their small circle, a new foundation was being laid. The bond between them, though tested, hadn't broken. Instead, it felt stronger, forged in the fires of honesty, empathy, and a shared commitment to understanding. Sarah knew there would still be challenges, still moments of misunderstanding, but for the first time in a long time, she felt truly seen, truly heard by the people who mattered most to her. She said thank you, a simple phrase, but one laden with all the unspoken emotions of the past few days. Her friends nodded, their expressions mirroring her own sense of relief and renewed hope. They had moved beyond the hurt, beyond the apologies, and into a space of genuine growth and understanding. This wasn't just a mended friendship. It was a strengthened one, built on a deeper appreciation for each other's experiences and a shared commitment to a more informed and empathetic future. The trail ahead was long, but they would walk it together, step by conscious step. The rhythmic beat of the drum pulsed through the air, a deep, resonant hum that vibrated in Sarah's chest. She stood among her friends, Emily, Liam, and Chloe, at the edge of the powwow grounds. The vibrant colors of regalia, the intricate beadwork, the graceful movements of the dancers, it was a feast for the senses. Days ago, the thought of bringing them here would have felt impossible, a chasm too wide to bridge. Now, watching their faces, a quiet pride swelled within her. "This is amazing, Sarah," Emily said, her voice soft, almost reverent, as a dancer in a magnificent eagle feather headdress glided past. "I've never seen anything like it." Liam, usually so quick with a quip, was uncharacteristically silent, his eyes wide with genuine awe. He pointed to a small booth where an elder was demonstrating traditional basket weaving. "How long does something like that take?" he asked Sarah, his tone respectful. Sarah smiled. "Depends on the size and complexity. Some of these can take weeks, even months of dedicated work. Each one tells a story, you know." Chloe, ever the curious one, had already drifted closer to a group of women demonstrating beadwork. "The detail is incredible," she murmured, watching nimble fingers at work. "Is this a specific pattern, or do they just create as they go?" Sarah joined her, happy to explain. "Many patterns are traditional, passed down through generations. They often have specific meanings, representing elements of nature or important events or even family histories. But there's also room for personal expression, for new stories to be woven in." They spent hours there, moving from booth to booth, watching the dances, listening to the songs. Sarah found herself effortlessly slipping into the role of guide, answering their questions with a newfound ease. She explained the significance of the different dance styles, the symbolism of the regalia, the importance of the drum as the heartbeat of their people. There was no longer any awkwardness, no hesitant glances. Their questions were thoughtful, born of genuine curiosity, not just politeness. "So, the Trail of Tears, that wasn't just a single event, was it?" Emily asked later as they sat on a bench, sharing a plate of fry bread. It was a series of forced removals impacting multiple tribes. Sarah nodded, appreciating the depth of Emily's understanding. That's right. While the Cherokee Nation's experience is often highlighted, many other indigenous nations were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands. The Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Seminole, they all endured immense suffering. It was a systematic effort to clear the land for white settlement, driven by greed and a complete disregard for human rights. Liam, who had been listening intently, finally spoke. And those boarding schools you mentioned, Sarah, was that part of the same strategy to erase their culture? Exactly, Sarah confirmed, her voice tinged with a familiar sadness. The slogan was "Kill the Indian, save the man." They stripped children of their language, their names, their traditional clothing, their spiritual beliefs. It was cultural genocide, designed to assimilate them into white society. The intergenerational trauma from that still impacts our communities today in so many ways. The tears of our ancestors still flow through our veins. Chloe reached out and gently squeezed Sarah's arm. It's so much more than what we learned in history class. It's real. You've made it real for us, Sarah. Thank you. A warmth spread through Sarah. For so long, she had felt isolated in her knowledge, carrying the weight of her history alone. Now she saw understanding, empathy, and a genuine desire to learn in the eyes of her friends. It was a profound shift. Yeah, Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. It's not just history. It's living, breathing history. It's who I am. And seeing you all here, genuinely wanting to understand, it means the world to me. Thank you, all of you, for being open to this, for really seeing me. Later that week, they found themselves at the local museum, specifically at an exhibit on Indigenous art and history. This time, Sarah wasn't just a guide. She was a proud storyteller. She pointed out intricate pottery, explaining the techniques passed down through generations. She paused before a display of traditional clothing, sharing anecdotes about her grandmother's weaving. "This is a weapon," Liam observed, pointing to a beautifully crafted bow and arrow set. "But it's also a work of art. Many indigenous tools and weapons were," Sarah explained. "Everything was made with intention and respect for the materials. It wasn't just about function. It was about honoring the spirit of the animal or the tree from which it came. There was a deep spiritual connection to everything." Emily lingered before a series of photographs depicting the Trail of Tears. Her eyes were clouded with sorrow. "It's hard to look at these and not feel immense sadness," she admitted, "but also a sense of incredible resilience. To survive that, it's really powerful." "It is," Sarah agreed, placing a hand on Emily's shoulder. "Our ancestors endured unimaginable hardship, but they never gave up. They held on to their culture, their traditions, their languages, often in secret. That resilience, that strength, it's what defines us. It's why we're still here today, still fighting for our rights, still celebrating our heritage." Chloe, who had been reading a detailed plaque about the forced assimilation policies, looked up, her brow furrowed. So even after the forced removals, the government continued to try and erase indigenous identities. "It's not just about land, it's about who you are." "Precisely," Sarah said, feeling a surge of connection with her friend. "It's a continuous struggle for self-determination, for the right to exist as indigenous peoples on our own terms, with our own cultures and traditions intact. It's not a relic of the past, it's an ongoing fight. And it's why understanding this history is so crucial. It's why that joke Liam made and the casual ignorance it represented was so hurtful. It dismisses all of this, all the tears, all the struggle, all the resilience." Liam nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on a black and white photograph of children at a boarding school, their faces devoid of emotion. "I get it now, Sarah. Really. It's not just about a word, it's about everything. About generations of pain and also generations of strength. I'm so sorry, Sarah, truly. Thank you for showing us this. Thank you for not giving up on us." Sarah looked at each of her friends, their faces earnest, their eyes filled with a new understanding. The initial discomfort they might have felt had long since faded, replaced by genuine empathy and a shared commitment to learning. They were not just her friends, they were now allies, walking alongside her on this journey of understanding. The bond between them had deepened, forged in the crucible of difficult truths and shared experiences. It felt strong, unbreakable, and full of hope for a more informed, more compassionate future. The vibrant energy of the community fair hummed around Sarah, Emily, Liam, and Chloe. They were browsing a craft stall, admiring intricate beadwork, when a loud, dismissive voice cut through the air. "Oh, look at this stuff." A man nearby scoffed to his friend, gesturing broadly towards a display of indigenous art. "Just a bunch of feathers and trinkets. People still make this. Thought that was all, ancient history." Sarah felt a familiar tightening in her chest, a tension she'd carried for years. Her gaze instinctively flickered to her friends, bracing for their reaction. In the past, she might have been the only one to speak up, or worse, she might have let it slide, the weight of challenging every microaggression too heavy to bear. But this time was different. Before Sarah could even formulate a response, Liam stepped forward, their expression firm but calm. "Actually," Liam said, their voice clear and steady, "this isn't ancient history. This is living culture made by contemporary indigenous artists. Each piece tells a story, often passed down through generations." The man, startled by being addressed, turned, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. "Yeah," Emily chimed in, stepping beside Liam, her voice gentle but unwavering. "And these aren't just feathers and trinkets. Many of these designs hold deep spiritual significance and represent a rich artistic tradition. It's really beautiful if you take the time to look." She gestured to a beaded medallion, its pattern intricate and mesmerizing. The man still looked skeptical, a hint of disdain in his eyes. "Well, I just mean it's not exactly modern, is it? Like, aren't they supposed to be, integrated now?" Chloe, who had been quietly observing, now spoke up, her voice surprisingly strong. "Integrated into what exactly?" she asked, her gaze direct. "Indigenous cultures are incredibly diverse and resilient. They've adapted and thrived despite immense pressure. To suggest they should just disappear or conform to some narrow idea of modern is to completely misunderstand their strength and their right to self-determination. This art is a testament to that resilience." Sarah watched them, a wave of emotion washing over her. It wasn't just that they were speaking up, it was how they were doing it. There was no anger, no defensiveness, just a calm, informed assertion of truth. They weren't just repeating facts, they were embodying the empathy and understanding they had cultivated. Liam's earlier insensitive joke seemed a lifetime ago, replaced by a genuine advocate. Emily, who had initially been so quiet, now spoke with quiet conviction. Chloe, once hesitant, now commanded attention with her thoughtful words. The man seemed taken aback by their collective, confident response. He mumbled something inaudible, his bravado deflating, and then turned away, shuffling off with his friend. The brief, uncomfortable tension in the air dissipated, replaced by a quiet sense of triumph. Sarah walked over to her friends, a wide, genuine smile spreading across her face. "You guys," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "that was incredible. Thank you. Really, thank you." Liam shrugged slightly, a modest smile playing on their lips. "We just said what was true, Sarah. It's hard not to after everything you've taught us." "Yeah," Emily added, "it felt important. Like, we actually know things now, it's not just some abstract concept." Chloe nodded. "And it's not just about knowing, is it? It's about standing up, about not letting that kind of casual ignorance go unchallenged. It's about respect." Sarah felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, tears of profound gratitude and pride. This was more than just a moment of correction. It was a testament to their growth, to the deep impact of their shared journey. They weren't just her friends, they were allies truly. Their transformation was a powerful validation of every difficult conversation, every shared story, every moment of vulnerability. The weight she often carried felt a little lighter, knowing she wasn't alone in this fight. This was what true solidarity felt like. This was the future she had hoped for, unfolding right before her eyes. The air still hummed with the quiet victory from the community fair, a feeling of shared purpose settling over Sarah and her friends. As they walked home, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a new idea began to form. Sarah, still buzzing from seeing her friends stand up for what was right, spoke first. "You know," Sarah said, a thoughtful expression on their face, "what happened today, it really showed me something." Emily nodded, their eyes reflecting the last rays of sunlight. "Yeah," Emily said, "it showed us too. We can't just stand by." Liam, ever the pragmatist, chimed in. "So what do we do with that? How do we keep this going?" Chloe, usually more reserved, surprised them all. "What if we did something at school, like a project but a real one?" The suggestion hung in the air for a moment, then Sarah's face lit up. A project. That's it. They had been feeling the weight of educating others, but the idea of a collaborative effort, something they could build together, felt different, lighter. "Something about Native American awareness," Sarah continued, their voice gaining enthusiasm, "not just for us, but for everyone." The next few days were a whirlwind of brainstorming sessions. They met at Sarah's house, sprawled on the living room rug, surrounded by notebooks and half-eaten snacks. Sarah, with their deep knowledge and personal connection, naturally took the lead. "We need to make it engaging," Sarah said, sketching ideas in a notebook. "Not just facts, but stories. Real stories." Emily, with their artistic flair, immediately volunteered for the visual aspects. "I can design posters, maybe even a digital presentation with images and videos," Emily offered, already picturing vibrant colors and impactful graphics. "We could show traditional art forms, not just the finished pieces, but the process, the meaning behind them." They started researching different indigenous art styles, from intricate beadwork to powerful totem poles, their enthusiasm infectious. Emily spent hours sketching, trying to capture the essence of each tradition, ensuring their representations were respectful and accurate. Liam, who had a knack for research and organization, took on the historical component. "We need to cover the hard truths too," Liam said, his voice serious. "The Trail of Tears, the boarding schools, the forced assimilation. People need to understand the full picture, not just the pretty parts." He meticulously sifted through historical documents, online archives, and even reached out to a local university professor specializing in Indigenous studies for guidance. Liam's dedication to historical accuracy was unwavering, ensuring that every fact presented was thoroughly vetted. He wanted to make sure the information was accessible, but also unflinching in its portrayal of past injustices. Chloe, with her quiet strength and thoughtful insights, focused on the contemporary issues and resilience. "It's not just about the past," Chloe said, "it's about the present and the future. We need to highlight the ongoing struggles for land rights, for self-determination, for cultural preservation. And we need to show the incredible resilience, the ways Indigenous communities are thriving today." Chloe researched modern Indigenous movements, interviewed local activists with Sarah's help and connections, and compiled stories of success and ongoing advocacy. They wanted to convey that Indigenous cultures were not relics of the past but living, evolving entities. Sarah oversaw it all, guiding their efforts, ensuring authenticity and sharing personal anecdotes that brought the facts to life. "Remember," Sarah reminded them, "this isn't just about information. It's about empathy. It's about understanding that these aren't just historical events, but living, breathing impacts on people today." They helped Emily choose appropriate imagery, advised Liam on sensitive historical narratives, and connected Chloe with community leaders who could provide valuable insights. The project began to take shape, a multimedia exhibition for the school library, complete with interactive displays, a timeline of Indigenous history, and a section dedicated to contemporary Indigenous artists and activists. They planned a series of lunchtime talks where they would present different aspects of their research, inviting questions and fostering discussion. One afternoon, as they were assembling a display board about the significance of the buffalo in Plains Indigenous cultures, Liam looked at a photograph of a buffalo herd with a newfound respect. "It's incredible," Liam said, "how deeply connected everything is. The land, the animals, the people, the spirituality. It's not just a food source, it's a way of life, a belief system." Sarah smiled, a genuine warmth in their eyes. "Exactly," Sarah said. "It's about understanding the holistic worldview, something that's often lost in Western education." Emily, meticulously arranging beaded patterns on another board, mused, and the art. "It's not just decorative. Every line, every color, every bead has a story, a meaning." They had spent hours trying to replicate a simple beadwork pattern, realizing the incredible skill and patience it required. Chloe, preparing notes for their presentation on Indigenous sovereignty, added, "And the fight for self-determination isn't just a political issue. It's about preserving these connections, this way of life, for future generations." Chloe had been particularly moved by stories of Indigenous communities reclaiming their languages and traditional practices. The work was demanding, but they approached it with a shared enthusiasm that surprised even themselves. There were moments of frustration, late nights, and endless debates over the best way to phrase a particular historical event, but their collective growth was undeniable. They had moved beyond just being friends. They were a team, united by a shared purpose. When the exhibition finally opened in the school library, it was met with an overwhelmingly positive response. Students and teachers alike gathered around the displays, reading the information, watching the videos, and listening to the stories. During their lunchtime talks, the room was packed, and the questions were thoughtful and engaged. A younger student, after listening to Liam explain the devastating impact of residential schools, approached him with wide, curious eyes. "I never learned any of this in history class," the student said, their voice hushed. Liam, with a newfound confidence, explained, "That's why we did this project. To share these stories, to make sure they're not forgotten." Emily's artistic displays drew many, their vibrant colors and intricate designs captivating the eye. A teacher commented on the depth of research evident in their work, praising Emily for bringing such beauty and meaning to the project. "You've really captured the spirit of these traditions," the teacher said, admiring a display on basket weaving. Chloe's section on contemporary Indigenous issues sparked lively discussions. Students were surprised to learn about ongoing land disputes and the fight for environmental justice. Chloe, speaking with passion and clarity, answered every question with grace, emphasizing the importance of allyship and continued education. Sarah, watching their friends confidently explain complex topics, felt a surge of pride and gratitude. They saw not just the facts being conveyed, but the empathy, the understanding, and the genuine respect that had grown within their friends. The burden of being the sole educator had been lifted, replaced by the strength of their collective voice. The project had a ripple effect throughout the school. Teachers began incorporating more Indigenous perspectives into their lessons. The library ordered new books on Native American history and culture. Most importantly, it sparked conversations, shifting perceptions and fostering a more inclusive environment. One afternoon, as they were assembling a display board about the significance of the buffalo in Plains Indigenous cultures, Liam looked at a photograph of a buffalo herd with a newfound respect. "It's incredible," Liam said, "how deeply connected everything is. The land, the animals, the people, the spirituality. It's not just a food source, it's a way of life, a belief system." Sarah smiled, a genuine warmth in their eyes. "Exactly," Sarah said. "It's about understanding the holistic worldview, something that's often lost in Western education." Emily, meticulously arranging beaded patterns on another board, mused, and the art. "It's not just decorative. Every line, every color, every bead has a story, a meaning." They had spent hours trying to replicate a simple beadwork pattern, realizing the incredible skill and patience it required. Chloe, preparing notes for their presentation on Indigenous sovereignty, added, "And the fight for self-determination isn't just a political issue. It's about preserving these connections, this way of life, for future generations." Chloe had been particularly moved by stories of Indigenous communities reclaiming their languages and traditional practices. The work was demanding, but they approached it with a shared enthusiasm that surprised even themselves. There were moments of frustration, late nights, and endless debates over the best way to phrase a particular historical event, but their collective growth was undeniable. They had moved beyond just being friends. They were a team, united by a shared purpose. When the exhibition finally opened in the school library, it was met with an overwhelmingly positive response. Students and teachers alike gathered around the displays, reading the information, watching the videos, and listening to the stories. During their lunchtime talks, the room was packed, and the questions were thoughtful and engaged. A younger student, after listening to Liam explain the devastating impact of residential schools, approached him with wide, curious eyes. "I never learned any of this in history class," the student said, their voice hushed. Liam, with a newfound confidence, explained, "That's why we did this project. To share these stories, to make sure they're not forgotten." Emily's artistic displays drew many, their vibrant colors and intricate designs captivating the eye. A teacher commented on the depth of research evident in their work, praising Emily for bringing such beauty and meaning to the project. "You've really captured the spirit of these traditions," the teacher said, admiring a display on basket weaving. Chloe's section on contemporary Indigenous issues sparked lively discussions. Students were surprised to learn about ongoing land disputes and the fight for environmental justice. Chloe, speaking with passion and clarity, answered every question with grace, emphasizing the importance of allyship and continued education. Sarah, watching their friends confidently explain complex topics, felt a surge of pride and gratitude. They saw not just the facts being conveyed, but the empathy, the understanding, and the genuine respect that had grown within their friends. The burden of being the sole educator had been lifted, replaced by the strength of their collective voice. The project had a ripple effect throughout the school. Teachers began incorporating more Indigenous perspectives into their lessons. The library ordered new books on Native American history and culture. Most importantly, it sparked conversations, shifting perceptions and fostering a more inclusive environment. One afternoon, after a particularly successful presentation, they sat together in the empty library, the hum of the computers the only sound. "We did it," Emily said, a tired but happy smile on their face. "Yeah," Liam agreed, leaning back in his chair. "And it felt good, really good." Chloe nodded, a quiet sense of accomplishment radiating from them. "It's just the beginning, though." Sarah looked at each of them, their hearts full. "It is," Sarah said, their voice soft but firm. "And I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else." Their journey, which began with a difficult conversation and a moment of insensitivity, had transformed into a shared purpose, a testament to the power of empathy, education, and true friendship. The initial conflict had indeed become the bedrock of a deeper, more meaningful friendship, built on respect, understanding, and a shared commitment to justice. They would continue to learn from each other, showing that true friendship embraces differences and fosters growth. Years melted into a decade, and the threads that first wove Sarah, Emily, Liam, and Chloe together had not frayed. Instead, they had tightened, becoming a strong, intricate tapestry. The initial awkwardness, the ill-conceived joke that had once hung heavy in the air, was now a distant memory, a turning point they often referenced with quiet smiles. It had been the crucible, forging a friendship far deeper than any of them had imagined possible. Sarah, now a celebrated Indigenous artist whose work blended traditional motifs with contemporary statements, often hosted them at her studio. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating vibrant canvases and intricate beadwork. Emily, a successful documentary filmmaker, was usually the first to arrive, her camera often slung over her shoulder, though today it remained in its case. Liam, a history professor specializing in Indigenous studies, would follow, usually with a new book or article he was eager to discuss. Chloe, a community organizer dedicated to social justice, would complete their circle, her energy infectious. "Remember that first powwow?" Emily said one afternoon, stirring her tea. "I thought I knew so much from textbooks. Turns out I knew absolutely nothing that truly mattered." Liam nodded. "It's humbling, isn't it? To realize how much history is deliberately omitted, how many voices are silenced." He gestured around Sarah's studio. "Your art, Sarah, it speaks volumes, it fills those gaps." Sarah smiled, a genuine, soft smile that reached her eyes. "It's because you all listened. That's the difference. Most people don't want to hear. We had to," Chloe interjected. "You showed us what was at stake. Not just for Indigenous communities, but for all of us if we ignore truth." Their conversations now flowed effortlessly, weaving between personal updates, discussions on current events, and reflections on their shared past. The school project, born from that initial spark of understanding, had been just the beginning. It had propelled them all onto paths dedicated to education, advocacy, and cultural preservation. Emily's documentaries frequently highlighted Indigenous stories, giving voice to elders and activists, and challenging stereotypes. Liam's lectures at the university were renowned for their depth and honesty, dismantling colonial narratives and emphasizing Indigenous resilience. Chloe had become a fierce advocate for land rights and social justice, tirelessly working with Indigenous communities across the country. And Sarah, through her art, continued to tell stories, heal wounds, and celebrate the enduring spirit of her people. It all started with that one moment, Liam mused, tracing the rim of his mug. "That insensitive joke. I cringe thinking about it now." "We all do," Emily agreed. "But it was necessary in a strange way. It showed us our ignorance and it pushed us to do better." Sarah looked at each of them, her gaze filled with warmth. "It showed me who my true friends were. Not just people who would laugh at my jokes, but people who would stand with me, learn with me, fight with me." Chloe reached across the table and squeezed Sarah's hand. "Always. We're in this together." The initial conflict had not broken them. It had refined them. It had taught them the importance of empathy, the power of uncomfortable conversations, and the profound beauty of cultural exchange. Their friendship wasn't just about shared laughter and good times. It was built on a foundation of mutual respect, a shared commitment to justice, and an unwavering belief in each other's growth. "Do you remember that man at the community fair?" Emily asked, a mischievous glint in her eye. "The one who said Indigenous art was ancient history." Liam chuckled. "Oh, I remember. I still get a kick out of how quickly we all shut him down. He didn't know what hit him," Chloe added, laughing. "We were a united front, and it felt amazing." Sarah nodded, her eyes shining. "It did. It felt like, finally, I wasn't alone. That I had allies who understood, who cared." Their bond was a testament to the idea that true friendship wasn't about always agreeing, but about always learning, always growing, and always supporting each other, especially when it mattered most. They had navigated difficult conversations, confronted their own biases, and emerged stronger, more compassionate individuals. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across Sarah's studio, they fell into a comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts, yet deeply connected. The journey had been long, sometimes challenging, but infinitely rewarding. They had not only transformed their own lives, but had, in their own ways, contributed to a more understanding and just world. "To us," Chloe said, raising her now empty mug. "To growth, to learning, and to never stopping. To empathy," Emily added, clinking her mug against Chloe's. "To truth," Liam chimed in. Sarah smiled, her heart full. "To friendship." Their friendship, born from a moment of misunderstanding, had blossomed into a powerful force for good. a beacon of hope, and a living example of how true connection could bridge divides and build a brighter future. One conversation, one act of understanding, one shared journey at a time. The echoes of their past conversations, of tears and laughter, of frustration and triumph, resonated in the quiet room, a harmonious testament to the enduring power of their bond.